Chapter 50, The Furled Banner. The Furled Banner. ARandomAudiobookAppeared was not sure which he became aware of first, the grey light that was filtering in hazy lines through the closed shutters or the sound of the sparrows greeting the dawn in the eaves. So far south, glass in the windows was deemed a luxury most places could not afford, and their inn was no exception. The small room was cool, dawn light opening the plain, whitewashed space to which he had paid little mind the evening before. The door was opposite, a dented washstand crammed in behind it and wooden chair next to that, the two narrow beds they had paid for set either side of the draughty window, and heaped with quilts and blankets in various faded shades. A sigh from the bundled bedding but a yard from him, so Fritha had eventually made it back to their room last night. He had left her in the tavern when the vesper bells had sounded across the city, laughing over cards with those drunk sell swords. He had not wanted to leave her, but his options were limited. He could not make the girl retire, but, equally, he had not felt up to staying down there with her and walking all the next day with a hangover. ARandomAudiobookAppeared shifted, burying his shoulders under the quilt and weighing the temptation to sit and grab his tunic from where his clothes were neatly folded over the chair, Fritha's piled much less carefully about its legs. The others would reach Furail any day now, and he wondered if any knights he knew were stationed there. It felt strange to consider they could be, that his friends would be standing ready for a battle when he, who knew more of what they were to face than any of the orders, would be far away. But this was his path now, going with Fritha to seek the aid of the only allies he could still claim. ARandomAudiobookAppeared lay still, watching the light creep across the dusty rafters as, outside, the town slowly stirred to life, roused by the chime of the temple bells. Everything was different now. For the first time that he could recall, he wanted nothing. He was not worried about his fate within the order, or the coming war, or if Brianna could have been saved. Even Fritha, who had once been his soul's desire, now slept but a yard from him, and the thought stirred nary a flutter. And it was wonderful, in a quiet, somber sort of way, not having to be that man anymore, so rash and insecure, always hungry for something more to banish the barren sense of worthlessness that had seemed to hang ever in him. Complete, that was how he felt now, as though parts of him had always been empty, but he had tried to fill himself with all the wrong things. But, at last, no longer. He knew his course, he would walk into the future with Fritha and ease her path however he could, even with where it was to take her. Perhaps it was as the girl said, that, for all their regrets, it felt right when they accepted their destiny. In the bed just across from his, something stirred.
Fritha!
A muffled mixture of groan and yawn, and a tousled mop of amber curls slowly emerged, a pale hand pushing them clumsily from bright, black eyes.
Morning, ARandomAudiobookAppeared.
A pause as she shifted onto her back and let her eyes grow accustomed to the wan light.
What time is it? A little after sunrise. I heard the Lord's bells not long ago. How are you feeling?
All right, she murmured tightly, jaw-locked for an instant as she stretched under the quilt.
Just a bit tired. I was mostly sober by the time I came to bed.
ARandomAudiobookAppeared doubted her assessment of the thing, but she did look well enough and he tried to keep the censure in his tone to a minimum.
And what time did you come back? You were quite reluctant to leave your friends when I retired.
A dry snort.
I'd have stayed down there even if I was sat on my own. It was barely sundown when you went up to bed.
She glanced to him.
You disapprove my socializing? No,
he lied.
It is merely that you have so little time left. I am surprised you wish to waste every other day on a hangover.
Yes, the girl mused to the dusty beams above.
It must seem a bit daft to you, but I need this, now and then, to remind me what I'm doing it for. A couple of ales and people are nicer, everything's shinier, the world is worth saving. Speaking of which...
She heaved herself upright, settling in amongst the crumpled blankets to gather them about her against the chill.
Our journey to the keep,
a Nomen supplied, ready with his investigations.
As it stands, it will take another 10 days on foot. Normally, I would suggest obtaining horses, but once into the mountains we would have to carry our own feed. I doubt Watcher's Keep usually gets more than a few bands of pilgrims a year, but it seems many are headed there at the moment.
He watched her watch him, a moment searching the bright eyes that stared back at him and feeling an unnamed worry stir low in his stomach.
They have put a call out for mercenaries, though I do not know why. I was speaking to a trader last night. He told me the roads west are teeming with mercenary bands and other groups we will likely wish to avoid, so it would be better if we could travel with a group. Yes, I heard as much, too. You did?
He exclaimed. He did not think she would have bothered with anything outside of the usual body flirtations over cards.
Oh yes,
she nodded wisely, an oracle in quilted robes,
and, what's more, I may have the solution.
A Nomen paused on the inn's empty wooden porch, the tables and chairs of the night before not yet set out at that hour. It was fortunate Fritha had insisted they forego breakfast, the girl racing over to laundry as soon as she was dressed to collect their still damp clothes. She was standing beside him now, cloaked against the morning's chill and bent under her pack just as he was. The group she had been eager to catch was obvious in the teeming street, a cart and covered wagon parked side by side across most of the road with little care as to how they blocked it, while 2 horses waited patiently within the shafts, too old to be bothered by the people that surged past them. 2 men were loading supplies onto the cart, the dark outline of their fellows seated in the gloom of the covered wagon. 1 man was standing on the step at the mouth. Both his skin and hair were of the same earthy brown, the short stub of his bound ponytail wagging above the collar of his cloak as he talked animatedly to someone within.
You are sure of this?
A Nomen hissed.
If they realize it is you on the bounty notices. They won't. I told you, they think I'm your servant. To be fair, they really weren't that interested in getting to know me, at least not in a way which involved talking. Fritha,
he warned, but she had already batted at him to hush, the girl stepping from the porch and patiently waiting for someone to note them. An older man who had been heaving sacks of feed onto the cart was the first.
Here, Jar.
The lean figure on the wagon step started at the address end. As he turned, a Nomen recognized the long-faced vulture from the night before. His eyes found Fritha immediately, his smile was only an instant behind.
Malal, my pearl, what brings you here? As you said last night, it's best to travel in a group in these dangerous times. You lads still have room on the wagon. Of course, he cried, I'd have you along even if the rest of us were forced to walk.
Dark eyes narrowed a fraction as they fell upon a Nomen, the smile did not waver.
And who's this? This is my master, brother Iorworth, the one I told you of last night. Oh the Helmite? I was expecting someone older.
But any more to this grim appraisal was cut short by the arrival of 2 men, packs across their shoulders and weapons at their hips, their clothes crumpled and soiled from days on the road.
All right, Jar, we still good for a place?
Came the first. He clearly assumed he was, the man moving to dump his pack in the cart beside them. Jar's facade of friendship vanished.
No. Sorry, turns out we've no room. But you said. And now I'm saying there ain't room, so clear off.
A Nomen watched the pair share a dark look and reluctantly slink back into the crowds. Jar had returned his attentions to them, all smiles once more as he reached a hand down to Fritha.
Here, girl, let me help you there.
He hauled her up the wagon step, his free hand finding happy purchase on her rear. That Frithha pretended not to notice, did nothing to quell the displeasure that was slowing coiling in Anoman's chest.
What? You would prefer to walk?
She hissed to his scowl, trying to hide the obvious discomfort as they found places on the empty bench directly opposite the wagon mouth, the 2 rows of men that lined each side nodding to Frithha as they recognized her.
We all aboard, Jar?
Came a voice behind them, muffled by the thick canvas wall. The driver was ready for off.
Move out.
The wagon sprang forward with a jolt, Jar finally moving from his place at the mouth to sidle his lean frame onto the bench between Anoman and Frithha.
Now, isn't this fine? Kajal, pass over some of that wine, we have guests.
Through the streets of Ambrol they clattered, the wagon's mouth an open window upon ever-changing scenes of people, hurrying to work or to the market, that cart of men bustling through lives they would never know, and their rumbling passage was a match to the building disquiet in Anoman as Frithha summoned a smile for their host and accepted the bottle. The breeze was stirring through her short hair, Imoen raising a hand to shield her eyes from the glare that seemed to reflect off the swaying grassland about them in great shimmering waves, the field of blue above so bright, she could hardly bear to look upon it. A day and a half of walking had finally brought them to their destination, and the walled town of Furail was barely visible for the sprawling camp of pale dun pavilions, each blotted here and there with some colored house banner which likely served as a means to identify as much as decorate. The Order's camp was to the south of the town, and had been there for a while by the staked paling that surrounded it. Jahara was the first to see the break in the eastern wall, and their approach was quite overlooked in the tide of traders, laundresses, and runners from Furail itself, the 3 reaching the gate to be finally halted by a young Tethiran squire. He was no more than 17 winters and standing at ramrod attention in a plain blue tabard that Imoen fancied he was trying too hard to fill.
Hold, citizens, you have business with the Order? Sir Gant is in charge of hiring mercenaries, though I warn you, we hire only groups of a score or more men. He holds station in the temple to Torm within the town itself. Seek him there if you wish. We are not here to sign up,
cut in Jahara.
We need to speak to Lady Amaniti, we bring a report from the Apogis. I am sorry,
he dismissed and so promptly that Imoen wondered if he had even listened to them.
But the Knight Commander is a very busy woman. Perhaps I could relay. Look,
sighed Imoen, more than tired of his blustering.
We've walked all the way from Al-Hali. We have important information about Sendai and I'm only telling Knight Commander Amaniti.
The lad was frowning, pulling himself up to his full height and trying to ignore the fact that Minsk still stood over a head above him.
As I have already said.
The squire glanced back at the sudden presence behind him, 2 older men of the local coloring stepping in.
Stand down, Squire Bainivel,
offered the first, the amount of silver braiding on his blue surcoat ranking him highly within his order. Dark eyes came to rest upon Imoen in stern but polite interest.
Sendai. Not just anyone knows of that name, my lady. Who are you? We,
Imoen faltered, not sure she should be announcing her heritage so openly when the local army still had a warrant out for her brethren's arrest.
We were at Saradush. We helped fight Yagashura and we're here with news of Sendai.
A glance between the 2 knights, the first continuing evenly,
I understand you wish to help, but...
Imoen had had enough. The furious urge to tell them both to stuff it fought back in her desire to present the leader she knew she was supposed to be.
Listen, I know you would like to know more, but please believe me when I say lives are at stake. If Amaniti doesn't think so, she can soon throw us out again.
The knights eased the tension with a reluctant chuckle.
I suppose you have that right. I am Sir Carol and this is Sir Willem. Come, we will escort you.
Squire Baineville looked more than a little deflated as he returned to his post. Sir Carroll led the way as they moved through the neat rows of tall pavilions, men and women in the blue livery of the Silver Chalice and the occasional red of the Radiant Heart stood outside, some talking, others overseeing the work of their squires. Lady Amenity's tent looked little different from the others that surrounded it despite her position, the plain, bleached canvas bearing house banners in grey and green as well as those depicting the goblet of the Silver Chalice. Sir Carroll speaking to the knight who was on guard at the entrance, before both disappeared inside. There was barely enough time for Sir Willem to send the three a reassuring smile as he remained outside with them, before Sir Carroll had emerged once more with the guard.
"The Knight Commander will see you now."
Jaehaera offered him a deep nod as they filed past.
"Our thanks."
Inside, the relative gloom of the pavilion was warm, stuffy even, and Imoen realized how much the heat of the day must have been tempered by the cool breeze. There was little by way of furniture in the room, the commander must have slept elsewhere. In the center was a table, while behind was a large standing board covered in a map of Tethur and freckled with many colored dots which a young aide was hastening to cover as they entered. A woman of the local coloring was sat behind the recently cleared desk, dark hair silver at the temples and brow, her olive skin lined heavily across the forehead and less so about the mouth or eyes. This was a woman who had spent more years in frowns than in laughter. She wore the blue surcoat of the Silver Chalice over her mail, a pair of leather gauntlets and a neat collection of styluses and inks, the only things left upon the desk before her.
"Please," she began, gesturing to the 3 seats that had no doubt just been unfolded for their arrival, the woman dismissing her young aide with a nod. For a moment, she said no more, keen, grey eyes scrutinizing the dusty clothes and mismatched armor. "So, I am told you bring news of the Balspawn, Sendai."
"Sendai," began Jaehaera gravely, "is dead." Whatever Amenity had been expecting, it had not been that, graying eyebrows darting up her tanned forehead. She leaned forward with a rasp of mail, weathered hands planted upon the wide desk.
"Dead? You have proof of this?" "No, but she is,"
pressed Imoen,
"and if you don't believe us, a lot of people in the East are going to suffer before you can reach them."
Amenity caught her with a critical frown.
"I see. And who, exactly, are you?"
"Me," Imoen confirmed, wondering briefly whether she shouldn't be announcing her presence with a little more pride.
Well, I'm Imoen, what is it they call me, the savior of Saradush?"
The woman opposite cast over them again, as though she was suddenly seeing something very different from the 3 wayworn mercenaries who had first arrived, her gaze coming to rest on the girl.
"Imoen, one of the children? Yes, I can see why you were reluctant to merely announce your presence. So you are the mage who removed the enchantment on the giant, Yagashura."
Imoen snorted, not tired or defeated, but heavy with a wry amusement at how wrong everyone still had it.
"No, I'm not. Someone else did that, and I'm no more the savior of that city than anyone else who took up arms to protect it. But people need a figurehead for these things, a banner to rally under, and this time it has to be me."
Amenity eased back in her chair once more, something intense about her gaze that made Imoen wonder just who, or what, was judging her. Slowly, the woman began to nod, and Imoen was surprised to see a certain respect ease the hard lines on her face.
"I believe you. So you agree then?"
Imoen pressed eagerly,
"That Sendai's dead and your troops don't have to be here anymore?"
The knight commander's lined forehead creased in a pained frown.
"It is not quite as simple as that." "Really? And how much simpler does it need to be? Because there's a Balspawn as bad as Sendai back east raising an army, and we need to stop them." "You speak of Fritha, leader of the 5,
confirmed the commander wearily.
I could hardly believe it when I heard, but I suppose when she killed the deceiver, Saravuk, her own selfish ambitions were well hidden behind the altruistic facade of sparing the North from war.
Minsk was shaking his head, Jahara looking like she was just suppressing the eye roll as Imoen heaved an exasperated sigh.
Frith's not leader of the five. Frith as well, she's our leader. She's...
The sudden swell of almost forgotten affection made the words come hoarse.
She's our friend. Fritha just wanted to help the other children and Tethur. I don't know who put about that rumor of her having command of dragons and drow, but it's all lies. And spread by those who wished to keep her from raising an army to face them,
added Minsk wisely.
Worked, too,
muttered Imoen, adding determinedly to the woman opposite.
Look, Fritha was the one who killed Sendai, and took the enchantment from Yagashura, and killed Abizagal. Who? This mage,
the girl offered dismissively,
the one who had the dragons. The only ballspawn we killed without her was Ilasira.
A pause as Amaniti performed the calculation in her head.
So, there is only one member of this five left. Yes,
agreed Jahara,
a monk called Balthazar from the monastery at Amkathran. He believes it is his duty to murder all the ballspawn, and he will plunge this land into war to do it. It is he who raises an army to the east,
added Minsk,
and we must stop him. We came here to rally men to fight with us.
On the desk, olive fingers formed a tense steeple.
I understand, but I cannot help you, at least not with men. The town of Furail and its routes to both the coast and Hagur's fort make this area strategically vital. Until something visible draws us away, we must remain here to protect it. From what?
Snapped Imoen.
The threats at the other end of Tethur. As it may seem to outsiders, but...
Amaniti drew a deep sigh, seemingly weighing up how much she should divulge, and the breath was released with an air of frustration. Very little would be held back.
This province borders the land of a Duke Sidus Farn, the head of a very old, very respected Tethuran family and a known opponent of the Queen. Though he would never act openly against Her Majesty, his family finances a moderate but well-trained force of soldiers who have protected their lands from the time when Tethur was still embroiled in civil war. The lands around Furail need protection. Were not the Silver Chalice stationed here, then the Duke would have every reason to move his troops in to take our place, for the good of Tethur. And the people, as fearful as they are, would likely welcome him. Only, you do not believe he will remove himself so obligingly once this threat has passed,
supplied Jahara. Amaniti's male winked with her shrug.
I do not know, but the Queen clearly holds it as a concern, and has spoken to the prelate thus. In one bloodless move, Farn could lay claim to the most profitable third of Tethur's coastline, farmlands, and the old capital. I am sorry.
She added at the assembled frowns before her.
I know it must seem petty, but I have my orders and our presence here is not in vain. Between the Queen and the Duke, Tethur could be split by a civil war as bloody as the last. But that said, the Duke is loyal to Tethur and its people, and he has an army at his disposal. Why not ask of him what you asked of me? If he agrees to send men with you, I may have a case to put to my superiors to allow some of our own forces to move further east. And, what is more, you will have what aid I can afford you. You will be given horses for the rest of your journey, and I will provide you with what supplies we can spare for any men you manage to gather. Where should I send them? Where do you plan to raise this force? Al-Hali,
said Minsk.
Al-Hali.
The woman repeated,
the ruined village.
Imoen nodded.
We wanted those who missed Saradush to see what a Ballspawn army's capable of.
Amaniti drew back in her chair with a sigh, looking for the first time as old as her lined face suggested.
Yes, it is not something to which anyone should be able to turn a blind eye. I will have my aide prepare a letter confirming your station and purpose for the Duke. It will be with Sir Carol at the gates whenever you wish to depart. And,"
she added as the three of them rose in their queue to leave,
"may you walk in tears, Grace."
After the stale warmth of the tent, the breeze across the plains was especially pleasant.
"Well, that was,"
Imoen breathed a sigh, clearly fighting back the waste of time to something more fitting to her new position as leader.
"less promising than I had hoped,"
she ground out at length.
"You did well to get us inside the palisade,"
praised Jaehaera to the girl's surprise.
"You can be charming when you wish it." "You needn't sound so surprised."
Imoen laughed, her mood ebbing as she added grimly,
"Besides, I think we might have to be a bit more than charming to get what we need before Balthazar's on the move. Who says we must speak with this Duke? If he truly wishes to aid his homeland, he will help us." "I wish I were as sure, Minsk,"
Jaehaera muttered, scanning the activity about them.
"Many people are blinded to these simplicities by their own selfish agendas. You may find this man's idea on how to best aid his land is by having him rule it. In any case, we must speak to—"
She paused as her eyes caught on a familiar flaxen-haired knight who had just appeared from the sprawl of tents about them.
"Is that not Simon?"
cried Imoen. Every man in the surrounding 10 yards whipped to them, including the sun-tanned Lathendite she had called to, the frown easing to a beaming smile as he finally recognized her.
"Imoen!"
He laughed, bounding over to them to catch the girl in friendly embrace.
"Imoen! Look at you! I barely recognized you with your hair darker. And Mistress Jaehaera, and—"
Simon stopped, surfacing from where he had been furiously thumping Minsk's back to glance over their meager three.
"Where are the others?" "They are well,"
said Jaehaera, assuaging the worries written plain on his face,
"but could not attend with us. We left Valigar and Solafane at Al-Hali. The last two—"
She trailed off, sending a pointed glance about them to the half-dozen or so men within earshot. Simon perceived her fears.
"Ah, how my mother would be scolding my lack of manners,"
he laughed.
"Come, I have a pavilion over in the east of the camp. We can take some refreshment there and continue this at our ease."
His pavilion was small, but serviceable, a young squire as blonde as his knight hastening to his feet from the pair of boots he had been polishing, the footlocker set at the end of the bed serving him as a makeshift table.
"At ease, young Pars,"
greeted Simon kindly,
"these are some friends of mine from Why don't you go and see if Sir Donnell needs any help with the horses?"
A nod and the boy was off, the tent flap slapping cheerfully closed behind him. Simon insisted Imoen take the only chair while he sat next to Jaehaera on his narrow folding bed, Minsk alone on the cot opposite.
"You know of the warrant for a nomen then?"
Simon confirmed as they settled into their seats.
"Ah, my friend, Helm did not give you an easy path to walk. And I have denied these rumors that Fritha is leader of the five since they first came to light, to little avail. You say they are well, where are they now?"
Jaehaera was frowning.
"If we tell you, will you be obliged to tell your superiors?"
Simon snorted.
"Obliged or not, I won't be."
It seemed this was enough for Imoen.
"A nomen has gone with Fritha to Watcher's Keep." "The keep? Have they gone into hiding?" "No, neither of them would accept that." "You need not guess, Simon,"
cut in Jaehaera.
"They have gone to consult the libraries regarding the prophecy for Baal's return. They seek a way to circumvent it."
A glance between their trio, Imoen's answer came unusually quiet.
"Something like that."
The slap of the tent flap saved them from any more questions though, Simon on his feet to greet the dark-haired man who had just entered, the once pale skin now almost as tanned as Simon's.
Eric,
the Lathendite nodded, something strained in his manner that Imoen did not miss.
What's happened between you two?
Eric flushed as he sank onto the bed next to Minsk.
Nothing. We merely...
Simon would not let him finish the lie.
After Anomen left and we returned to Sir Ryan Troll questioned us regarding Anomen's departure. Our reports were the same in content.
A dark scowl was thrown to Eric,
if not in spirit. Anomen deserted.
Eric burst out in frustration.
Anomen did what he thought was right and it was. Look at us, the order is down here now and if we had stayed when we had first heard of this threat at Saradush we might have ended this war before it even began. You do not know that, Simon,
Eric retorted,
and it is not our decision to make.
Simon sighed and shook his head, but was not willing to pursue the fight further it seemed, Eric turning to their three.
I just spoke to Sir Carol, so you have met with the Knight Commander? Yes,
said Jahara,
we hope to gather men to march upon the Balspawn army which is being raised in the east. Lady Amanity is sending troops,
cried Simon.
I will volunteer.
Jahara raised a hand to forestall the eager young man who was already halfway from his seat.
Stay, Simon, Amanity is not sending anyone. The situation here requires your presence more. You mean the Queen would rather keep us here to protect her throne as the east burns?
Snapped Simon. Eric's jaw dropped.
Simon, you speak treason. She is not my queen and this is not my land. I serve Lathander and the Radiant Heart, in that order, and I came here to fight those who would ravage these people, not to stand guard against a political land grab. If an army marches in the east then we will have to mobilize, Simon, you know this. Until then,
Eric sighed,
we must just be patient.
Simon slumped back, looking tired.
Sweet sunrise, I cannot wait until all this is over and we are returned to I will want to see you all at the family estate.
He added, suddenly smiling once more as he rested his elbows on his knees.
Homecomings are always to be celebrated, and tell Fritha my sisters are still eager to meet her.
Imoen's face had frozen in the smile she was wearing, not even a hint of hesitation to her tone as Jahara watched the girl realize how easy it was to lie about some things.
Yeah, course. I'll tell her.
End of chapter.